And keep it honest. I think one of the things casual players can spot right away is honesty. I think if they go to a site and they see a lot of market speak and then they see a contrived interview with a dev, they're going to have a very different experience than if they come by and they see honesty. Just being real and honest, you know, and there's a lot of ways you can do that, but Stargate was a really good example of a site that we kept very honest, and the forums were excruciingly honest. Sometimes
there's a lot of ways you can mess that up.
I had to sit on devs, and early on, yeah, sure, we made a couple of, you have to readjust and rethink some things and ban some accounts. But no, for the most part, fans know if you're being honest. They know if you're human. They want you to be terrific at what you do, but seeing that other side of things, the human aspect of things,
I think also MMO players are becoming very sophisticated. They understand the business and they understand the industry very, very well. And there are, people on our forums that, you would think that they had been sitting in a meeting and listening to what we were saying. I mean, these people they have grown up in this industry and they've figured it out. So, and it's no longer a mystical, can I please have my thing and why can't I have it? People are getting it, so it's easier to communicate now, I think, than ever.
Or there are other devs coming and squatting in your forums and asking the hard questions.
We ban them.
I don't hate fan sites, for the record. I think there's plenty of content to go around for both fan sites and your site. I do disagree. I don't think that fan sites having exclusives drives them to your site. It drives them to the fan site. And often fan sites do RSS feeds, and if they have the mini headline, that may drive them to your site. But if you're giving them exclusive interviews that never appear or nothing similar appears on your site, I don't think they're going to visit your site. Personifying your company, as was mentioned, giving inner peaks to the company is always a great thing, whether they're talking about the game specifically or not. It's harder to yell at somebody you feel an attachment to because they too may like cooking or crocheting or knitting or play the favorite MMO you do. And it really helps the situation when your company does do something that players may perceive as stupid. Not that we have any experience with that. And lastly, as they kind of touched on, influencers are really key. And I missed that in my points on getting your message out. I don't know if any of you attended the metrics data mining panel this morning. He did a brief bit about social networking. They are a very effective tool for getting your word out. And if you have a good harness on who your most influential, who the people are that are talking to everybody that are not gold farmers, you can get them the messages, and they will get it out far better, far cooler, and more reliably than you ever can. People will trust somebody coming to them saying, hey, they're doing X and it's really cool, as opposed to a marketing message on a website.
That's right. Great. Awesome. That was great. So I want to go to Q&A now. So does anybody have any questions? Great. Go ahead. So wait, you work for a dev... No.
Jess is setting me up.
I was interested in the conversation about the transition from the closed beta to the open beta and the change in community and the opportunities for warfare that happened there. And I was wondering, is that something where it's an indication of poorly chosen early population that's not characteristic of the larger population, or is it a situation where any population that had that early access would go in that direction? Is there any way to sort of use metrics and looking at influencing behavior to understand those?
As a community guy, I'm not a math guy, but I will tell you that I think that there are studies that will show you communities form and they storm and then they renorm and form again, and there are multiple studies out there that will show you just sort of the progression. I think that having that problem is an indicator of success. How you manage it is really the important part. So I think that it's hard to say, did you handpick the wrong people to join your community early on, because ultimately you throw out your hooks and you try to grab somebody or someone and try to get them interested. We were really very fortunate in that our game has a historical feel to it, and so the people that we pulled in were historians and librarians and people who worked in museums, and that's not your typical MMO person, but we were able to kind of bring them in. Oh yeah, I forgot about you, right.
Well, you're not
you don't count.
either.
You're a historian.
Yeah.
You also tend to build a higher sense of ownership with that earlier closed community, and that's where a lot of the problems come about, is when you open it up to all those people who weren't weren't there in the hard stages when they had to submit bug reports by text or snail mail or whatever the case may be. They're resentful of that. They're resentful that these new opinions are going to change the game that they've been helping to form and mold.
And the new players are resentful of the players that got to see it and got to be there when. You know, you've got the resentment on both sides a little bit.
Okay,
A quick follow-up is there any indication on whether it's better to do that as a rapid, just open the gates transition, or whether that goes better if you let it trickle in the way Google did with Gmail? Something like that.
You don't have the luxury sometimes, right? It just depends on the game.
I was just going to say, it really depends on your development schedule, but I mean, I think the best case scenario would be to make sure you have a stable, strong game, and then open floodgates and get people in. I mean, that's really what it's all about. And so hopefully that those core people you've drawn in have given you, enough feedback, and clearly those are going to be your early beta testers.
And maybe get an early message out to the people that were in the closed beta. Okay, now we're going to be opening the floodgates. We're looking to you to make the new people feel welcome and be accepting of them. You guys got you got the privilege of being here early. Now let's make everybody else feel like they're special too.
Okay, Jess.
Which is harder, wrangling your players or wrangling your dev?
It's equally hard.
Say, just as hard on both sides.
I'm very, very lucky. Our dev team is good, very, very good at interacting, and not just because half of them are in here.
He's wrangling right
But
now.
they are, but they're really passionate about community. There's a lot of transparency in our company. We really aren't afraid to say, wow, that really sucked, and we apologize, and we're not afraid to sort of enlist opinion, and also say, while this may be very passionate to you, it may not make it ultimately into the end design, and that's part of the process and part of establishing those norms. And once you do that, and establish them, and there are moments where, I think everybody has experienced this, where you've had somebody, and I'm not referring to any particular company or instance, Matrix Online, but when you have people who post on the forums and explode and kind of lose their mind a little bit, and if they're staff people, it's a challenge. It can be a challenge. So that's why you do want to measure and kind of mete out those resources so that you are, you're presenting your best face at all times, even when the community is, ready to, literally calling in bomb threats. I mean, that's the reality.
There are different challenges on each side, and it depends on the relationships you've built. But developers are busy guys and gals, and they may not want to be harassed with the question of the week from the forums. So sometimes it does take some work to track down those answers. They're also very passionate about their projects, so sometimes they don't want to hear that the players think that design element X sucks. And you just need to work on those internal relationships so that you can go to them comfortably and they're comfortable hearing it from you.
I think it's the same trick with identifying your strongest leaders on the community side, who are articulate, who are honest, who want the best for the game. You do the same thing on your dev team. You figure out pretty early on who's going to present a really good face for the company, who's going to be passionate about the game without scaring off people, or who are eccentric fun, not eccentric creepy. You just find the right devs, and you start to use them more or to ask them more than the others.
Okay.
What kind of considerations do you make for letting people play a beta for too long? Maybe they've experienced the whole game and they actually don't want to buy it now that it's out.
It's a risk, and I think that's actually part of a larger discussion that I've seen actually going around in blogs, is whether you should beta at all. And unfortunately, that's not a risk that community has any say in. It really depends. Often when a game is open for beta too early, they thought they were closer to being done than they were. It's not something you can measure.
I think that what we can speak to is keeping your beta community entertained outside of the game, and when they're waiting for the next patch or they're waiting for the next fix. There are things that you can do as tactics, and we do beta-only dev logs. We do, the beta discussions, beta contests, those kinds of things to kind of keep that community engaged. And we also try to instill in our beta community a sense of loyalty and a sense of they're part of the Flying Lab family, and that works for us. I mean, people do come back, and